Hey, Krob.
How are you
I
doing,
have to
John?
ask you, I'm good. I have to ask you a question. Why?
42.
That's, well, okay. That doesn't answer this particular question. I
Answers
appreciate it
everything.
though. I know. Why are there two of you in the Slack channel, and why did you change your name from C-Rob in Slack to Christopher Robinson? What prompted the change? Because you used to be at C-Rob, and now it's Christopher
Um,
Robinson.
well, uh, at C Rob is probably associated with my Red Hat identity
Yes.
because it was part of their corporate account. So I no longer work
Yep.
there. So the new one is affiliate, just my personal affiliation.
Oh, you don't work for Red Hat anymore.
No, I moved about coming up on 2 years. I'm at Intel now.
Wait. So you haven't been C-Rob for a while then in this Slack channel.
Yeah, the deprovisioning is not enterprise strong suits.
No, okay, that's interesting. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, because I guess I have been part of
You've been with us a
the
long
OS.
time.
I've been with you guys for a while now, so that there I guess I have, yeah, I have seen that migration then. Huh. Has it really been 2 years?
April, so a year and 3/4.
With that one? Yeah, this started. I've been. I mean, I was not here in the very beginning, but I was here near the beginning.
I was here pretty close to the beginning, so almost three
Yeah,
years
you
for the
you yeah
foundation.
you beat me by a while to join this whole party. Um, yeah, I heard about. Let's see, where did I? So the reason that I joined the OpenSSF was because I heard about it from Security Now. Um, it was something that Steve Gibson talked about as a project, and I was like, "Ooh, this sounds really interesting," and so I decided to hop on the bandwagon on this one, and I have been happily surprised by this particular endeavor in its entirety.
Yeah, my old boss, Mark Cox, got roped in around the founding of the foundation, and he immediately delegated everything to me.
Mark Cox, the Apache Software
Yep.
Foundation security person.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's one of my
he
mentors.
and yeah, he and I have had an interesting set of interactions mostly because all of my interactions with him has been as a security researcher. So it's naturally slightly contentious. Um, but yeah, so that's in general, I think we have, I don't know, I'd be fascinated what he thinks of me if we were to meet in person. Um,
Mark's a good dude. I miss working with him. But he's very British. Uh,
yep.
but yeah, that's not a boggle for me to manage
No,
working
no,
with.
no, no.
Yeah, the
I did
relationship is very different, like external and
Yeah, I have pissed
employee.
off a bit of the ASF with my automated vulnerability pull request issuance stuff. I ended up so I have an opt out mechanism for maintainers to say like, okay, if you don't want more of these pull requests, here's how to opt out. And the people behind the Apache Commons project opted out across all of their repositories, and uh I don't know. It means that I can't, if I want to report to them, I have to do it more manually now, and it's really annoying. Or they just end up not getting fixed, and that's yeah. Um.
Everybody
All right.
does things a little different, which is an interesting opportunity for us all.
Yep. All right. I have monopolized the first 3 minutes of this call. People are here though. Madison said she could not join.
Oh, that makes me sad.
No, she has a conflict.
We'll we'll make that a topic for next year to see if we need to change our meeting time at all. We'll give folks one more minute and get rolling. Yeah, Mark just retired from Red Hat about a month or so back.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Is he doing ASF stuff still, or
Yeah,
is he backing out of that?
he is full-time retired and part-time still playing with Apache and OpenSSL.
Oh, okay, cool.
Enjoying his, well-deserved rest.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem is, right, there's only so many people that are committed to this stuff. So, it's hard to find. You either got to find or hire new people to come in to take on the roles that have been like traditionally filled by people for a long time.
All right, well, let us get started. Welcome, everybody. This is the last call of the Vulnerability Disclosures Working Group for 2022. Next time we meet in January, we will have a different set of meeting notes. I have a link there. And part of my jobs before January rolls around is changing links in all the Slack channels to the appropriate set of meeting notes. So in January, don't sign in on this sheet, please. Sign in on the other sheet. I am still asking for comments on issue 118 to see what kind of participation we can get from this crew on APAC friendly meetings. We'll probably schedule a call, sometime in North America evening hours. The initial request is for some folks from Australia, but we want to cast as wide a net as possible. APAC is a very big region, so I need to circle back with the folks in Australia that requested for it, and get a list of them, and we'll probably get an alternate call. So anyone that's interested is invited to participate in the evening call. We'll probably do that maybe once a month or so going forward. But please provide any comments or suggestions, feedback into issue 118. Anybody has any opens, please add them below. That would be super groovy.
I am not in front of my computer yet, so I'll be right there. But two things. Hi, I'm here. Second thing, the ShmooCon, if it's not in the opens, and I'm getting a phone call, so I will be right back.
Okay. Yeah, I'll add that to opens.
Thank you.
So everyone is aware, yesterday we unveiled the OSS Cert SIG plan to the TAC, and unfortunately there was no time to talk about it, but at least the TAC knows that the plan exists. They are requested to comment on the plan. So if anyone is interested from this group providing feedback to the SIG on the plan, please comment on issue 32 in the SIG repo. That'd be delightful. And I expect we'll have further conversations with the TAC in January, and probably move towards the governing board for discussion about funding probably towards the end of January. So we still have some time to chat if anyone is interested in providing feedback. Any questions or comments on the OSS SIG, Cert SIG?
No.
Okey-doke. There was an interesting blog that came out a week or so back. Anyone is interested, we can discuss that here in the call, or we can even turn this into a GitHub discussion if we wanted to have kind of more of an asynchronous conversation around the topic. Has anyone had a chance to read the crash override article yet? The premise is how CVE and NVD don't work for the open source supply chain. Very provocative title. So I would request this group, and I'll send it out to the mailing list. If we have any strong opinions, if there's any learnings that we might be able to adopt and react to, please provide us that feedback. I'll shoot a note out to the mailing list after this call so we can have a dialogue there.
It's not in the Slack. Is it already in the Slack channel?
It is not in the Slack channel. It's in the meeting invite, but I will put it in the Slack channel.
You can put in the Slack channel. That'd be great. I am hopping on my computer right now to join this call twice, so I will try not to create a feedback loop with my audio while I do that.
Second to move around. All right, just dropped it into the Slack channel. So I'll shoot a note out to the mailing list so that we can kind of carry that conversation on through that medium and maybe bring it back as a future meeting topic. All right. Let us talk about ShmooCon.
Okay. Hi. So Madison and I got accepted to ShmooCon to speak. Yes, we have if you have not seen the abstract, let me dig up the abstract because it was fun. Oh, my mouse is not working properly. Okay. Shmoo CFP. So the abstract that we submitted and was accepted. Also, funny thing, I got accepted and rejected from ShmooCon in one because Madison submitted our talk, and so I get the email that says, "Hey, you've been rejected," and then immediately Madison sends me a message saying, "Hey, we've been accepted," and I'm like, "Wow, I've been accepted and rejected in like 30 seconds." That's like an emotional whirlwind from Shmoo right there.
Nice.
So, all right, so this is the abstract that we submitted. After hours of puzzling over your debugger, decompiler, or pen testing toolkit, you finally cracked it. The security vulnerability you strongly believed was present almost evaded you, but now you've got proof. You've achieved the thrill of finding a vulnerability that hopefully no one else on the planet knows exists. Now the process of vulnerability disclosure can begin. But where do you start? How does the process work? How do you report a vulnerability? To whom? How do you actually get these things called CVE numbers you've heard so much about? What do you do if the process here? What if you do if the process falters? In this talk, we'll demystify the vulnerability disclosure process by presenting a recently published open source software security foundation OSSF guide for open source vulnerability finders, and then in quotes the name of the guide fully and the link. From tracking down the correct place to disclose to publishing your findings so the wider world can defend themselves adequately. We'll even discuss that pesky human element that permeates the entire process along the way too.
Very nice.
Yeah, that was fun. I had fun writing that abstract, and it seems that the Shmoo people snagged it. So Madison and I have every intention of memeing this up as much as we have a 20-minute slot, and we will be telling the story of this guide and trying to tell a story that keeps people engaged and makes them laugh, and then also tells a compelling story. The idea at a high level, I think, is we would love the recording to be a semi-good stand-in for the guide in terms of a knowledge dump. But you could read the guide to get more information, but we don't want it all to be like, go read the guide, go read the guide, go read the guide. It's like you actually gain valuable knowledge out of just watching our talk, because some people consume stuff visually more than they would reading. One bit of feedback that I had on the guide is that the guide is very forward dense and describes a bunch of terminology instead of getting into the meat of the thing first.
Mm-hmm.
And so Madison and I both reread it in the process of writing this up. I don't know how we want to. Well, I don't know. I think it might be a different issue that we want to deal with, but that was just a note that we had from having read the guide recently. So if there's anybody that has any interest in being involved in the creation of the slide deck, we will be posting the link to that in the Slack channel whenever we create that, unless there is a place that someone from the OSSF can create for Google Drive documents under the Linux Foundation IP. Currently, this ShmooCon CFP is in my drive because I didn't have permission to create a drive anything for the OSSF. So ShmooCon, oh, my computer, my keyboard is attached to the other PC. ShmooCon is on, what date is it? It is January 20th to the 22nd. So we have a little over a month to get our talk together, but knowing the two of us, Madison and I, having ADHD, we will probably leave it to the last minute unless there is some, actually, it would be good to give us an opportunity to give this talk as a demo to you all so that it give us an earlier deadline and also give us an opportunity to run it early.
What was the end of the conference? 20th to the what?
20th to the 22nd. And it would be wonderful if anybody here could make it there. I know Shmoo tickets are really hard to get, but if you ring your phone tree, I presume that someone will have it, or just come play the Shmoo is also a good conference to just come do LineCon. Just show up and then, well, I've asked Katie, I talked to Katie Masaris, I'm like, how do you get tickets? She's like, I usually show up and then hopefully someone hands me a ticket at some point. So I'm like, Katie also knows a lot of people, but if you are interested in coming, I highly recommend it. So it's a good conference, a lot of fun, a lot of really interesting people, a lot of government types. If you want to get the opportunity to bump into those people, yeah.
So I would love to go. I'm not able to go. I would be glad to collaborate with you and provide, even if it's just kind of a second set of eyes on your presentation.
Yeah.
I have some other artifacts that you may be interested in taking a peek at. I did a similar presentation back at DerbyCon that you can mine for information.
Perfect.
Yeah, glad to see it. And, well, we can I would shoot a note out to the mailing list and the Slack channel asking for collaboration, contribution from the team. I think it's a great idea. And it's something I would like to next year, maybe be a little bit more strategic and thinking through conferences like ShmooCon, where it would be vital for us to go engage with the community and present things like this. So maybe we can actually put out a little schedule and be kind of focused in our efforts to try to hit some of these major constituencies and get this message out.
Yes, two things. I've spoken to Xavier, and apparently the GitHub Security Lab has a master list of security conferences that they keep track of and submit CFPs to. So if I can track that down and have him willing to share that widely, that would help.
That'd be great.
That would be really nice. Also, one of the things that I want to try to do is, if there are any good candidates for developer conferences, that would be good to get it into the hands of people that are not necessarily security directly related, but also have a long history of working with, that they have a likelihood of running into a security issue and not knowing what to do with it.
That'll be a particular target for the best working group and the education SIG, is trying to engage with that particular community, because a lot of the security conferences, you're kind of preaching to the choir.
Yep.
And we would like to get more in front of actual kind of hands-on keyboard folks to help engage with them.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Everybody else has been very quiet in this call. Anybody else have? Jeffrey, your audio is not even connected unless
he might be having a boggle. That's what I'm guessing.
Anybody else going to be making it to Shmoo?
Is it gonna be in person or virtual?
Yeah, Shmoo is in person. It's in Washington, DC.
Do they record it? Can we see the recording?
Usually yes, but I don't know if it's Art. Art, are you making it to Shmoo? I think you said last week whether or not you were making it. I forget.
Oh, hey, most likely no.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw this, but we got accepted to Shmoo with the title of the talk is "Congratulations, you found a security vulnerability in an open source project. Now what?" So yeah. Okay.
That actually is almost identical to the DerbyCon presentation I did a couple of years ago with Lisa Bradley at the time.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I think that's it for me on my side.
Cool.
I will drop the CFP document, which should be world readable, into the Slack channel so that anybody who wants to take a pass through what we actually submitted, you can do so.
So given the limited turnout today, I will defer talking about our next working group project for next year. So in the interim, between now and January, if you're thinking about some projects we might want to work on next, like there will be a group of us that'll work with the end user working group on a consumer CVD guide. We've talked about a playbook for maintainers so that when they're in the middle of a vulnerability response, how they might best be able to react. But if anyone has any other ideas for future work, kind of germinate that, feel free to drop an issue in our repo, and we'll have hopefully more folks involved in the conversation next year so we can start to pick some directions. And if we do multiple things at the same parallel, that is also pretty cool. Does anyone have any other topics they'd like to discuss today with the team?
I got another one.
It looks like Jeff finally connected.
Hey, Jeff. I got another one. This is more a story time with Jonathan slightly, but also like I don't know how to solve this problem. And another sort of like finder. So there's a popular YAML parser in the Java ecosystem called SnakeYAML. And 6 years ago, someone wrote up a paper and included a GitHub project called MarshallSec, which is it's a project and a paper about deserialization vulnerabilities in the Java ecosystem. And in particular, calling out a bunch of parser libraries that are vulnerable to arbitrary deserialization of objects leading to remote code execution, and how because of like YAML parsers are basically allowing for arbitrary deserialization of objects, attackers can load arbitrary class files and then lead to RCE. One of the projects, SnakeYAML, had this vulnerability re-reported to them by a Google maintainer like earlier this month with a payload. The SnakeYAML team said, we're not going to fix it. It's a feature, not a bug. A CVE was issued by Google. Now there's a discussion in their issue tracker about it. The primary maintainer is very stubborn about stating that this is a feature, not a bug. I've been trying to do my own part to communicate, hey, you're exposing a bunch of your users to risk here. Here are a bunch of CVEs that have been issued for downstream consumers of your library because of this vulnerable behavior. Like, this should be secure by default, yada, yada, yada. I am having limited success in terms of convincing this maintainer to actually change the default behavior to be secure. And this is all happening out in public.
Is he the sole maintainer?
But yeah, it's a good question. I've posted a link to the chat or to the thread and my attempts to convince the maintainer. But it seems like he's an Eastern European, maybe Russian maintainer. Yeah, so it seems like it's kind of owned by a single maintainer, or there is a primary maintainer that makes a lot of the decisions. And he's very unwilling to make a change here to secure his downstream users. And so I don't know, like my long-term plan is if he continues to refuse to make changes, I will go out and do my thing, which is there's a way to fix it. There's the way to fix it is to use there's a parameter called safe constructor that you can pass when you're creating the YAML parser, and it basically forbids arbitrary class loading. And I can go generate a few hundred or a few thousand pull requests to go fix that across the open source ecosystem, but I'd rather fix it at the source than try to do that, right? So that's a bit of vulnerability disclosure drama and a use case, and it's like, even now that it's because it's in the public, the maintainer is adamant that this remote code execution vulnerability is a feature, not a bug. And that's his argument is nobody parses untrusted YAML as an API, or they shouldn't be parsing untrusted YAML, and if they are, they should be securing themselves. This is not my responsibility. So, like, you know, the default is let you parse untrusted YAML to do these more powerful things. And I'm saying, why don't you just flip it so that it's secure by default and give people the opportunity to opt into the functionality and feature set that gives them the ability to shoot themselves in the foot.
Is he worried about his installed base community, or is it more his pride?
That is a good question. If you can determine that from reading through the thread, I've had a hard time discerning that, and I don't know how to speak to that. I've had to be very gentle in this, and it's hard because you get frustrated and you're like, okay, I can't be frustrated. I need to be calm and collected, and also, you know, fact-based, or, well, yeah. Also, I know that I'm a little blunt even when I'm fact-based. So
You have to choose your battles.
yeah, and I am the reason that I'm choosing this battle is because nobody else seems to, and it's been there for 6 years. And so I'm like giving it my 1-2 crack, because it seems like the conversation's happening, and it's kind of, you know, maybe it'll be worth it. Could be a legit concern to break. Yeah, and the breaking API changes, sure. And I'm, you know, general argument for that is, you know, go and you know, rev the major version. I'm also the king of breaking the Java ecosystem. I, you know, push for an initiative that just decommissioned the support of HTTP across the Java ecosystem in favor of HTTPS only, and broke 25% of the build infrastructure in the Java ecosystem in one day. So I'm not necessarily the right person to, you know, I see security as, you know, we should break things in order to fix security, even if it's a little painful.
And this is a common pattern that exists.
Yeah.
Remediating CVEs is not for sissies,
No.
if I can say that.
Well, it's a little intense. It's just slightly different term.
Not for the weak-hearted.
Yeah.
There you go.
The other issue that I'm running into in the same vein is I found a project that is using SnakeYAML in its endpoint, in one of its endpoints, and is vulnerable. And the GitHub security lab has reported a vulnerability to them. They didn't handle it, so they ended up dropping an ODay on them. And I found a similar vulnerability that is also RCE in that project. The project has 5,000 stars on GitHub, 5,000 plus stars on GitHub. It's a Chinese-based project, and the maintainers seem completely unresponsive to vulnerability reports. So that's another fun one too on top of that. Yeah. So you start digging and you just start finding cases of the real vulnerability actually occurring. So,
and again, it's the maintainer's choice on how they want to maintain and service their community.
mm-hmm.
And it is an unfortunate issue that a lot of times security is at odds with, you know, their desired maintenance, or their you know, how that community wants to, you know, leverage that tool. And it's been happening for a very long time. This particular, maybe not with this library, but this pattern, it happens again and again and again.
Yeah.
Or so another way, it's taken 20 years of open source to get us where we're at. It's going to take years to complete cleanup, and some will be relatively straightforward and some will remain highly problematic.
Yeah.
Yep. And some maintainers will be responsive because they have the time, resources, and ability to react to these things, and some won't. And it's up to kind of the consumers to be able to, hopefully they have that information at hand that they can make a choice. Do I want to continue to use this potentially exploitable piece of software, or do I want to make other choices?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the disconnect is that the consumers don't always get like that information isn't always like, like I know it, I would tell someone don't use this project, but like it's not.
Well, and there are methodologies. If the CVD process breaks down, there's other routes we can go. There's other tool. If the maintainer isn't going to issue a CVE, there are other reporting mechanisms, OSV, Bressers, and Kurt's project, was it GSD? But there are other mechanisms to get the information out there so that consumers can get that information and make choices, be aware of that. And if there are alternate mitigations that they might be able to deploy as a configuration option after the fact, sharing that with them. So if they continue to choose to use the vulnerable software that isn't going to be fixed, either they should move off, or giving them an opportunity to have a alternate mitigation to provide that, pass that parameter to themselves.
Right.
Be
One of the things that I'm seeing,
useful.
the snake YAML case, right? This vulnerability has been widely, known. There's a couple of CVs for snake YAML, and then you still see a bunch of projects that are still using it in a way that's vulnerable, in a way that leaves them vulnerable. So that information doesn't make the full loop back to the maintainer that's actually using the library, even though, and also snake YAML also puts in documentation like, hey, don't do this, just a heads up, you're vulnerable. They communicate that, but they leave it insecure by default.
And most open source is made to be used under a multitude of different scenarios. So you will see the trend that a lot of times things go out insecure by default because they don't know how their end consumer is going to deploy it. And they provide instructions or guidance saying, don't do this, but they don't necessarily lock that off by default. That's, again, a very common pattern, just because developers don't know how that software is going to be used. And there are scenarios that if you're a researcher or you're like in an academic education scenario, you might not want to be as restrictive, versus if you're a bank or a government, you want to have that secure by default. It's about, I see both sides. I wish it was more, I wish the developer was more receptive, but I am also sensitive to, they might not have the resources or interest to continue to change this. It sounds like they very clearly have stated we like this, and it's unfortunate that consumers aren't going to be able to. That they probably need to make some alternate choices.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a pattern, and maybe that's part of our efforts next year, is to figure out, do we have any tools in our toolkit to provide education for this type of pattern, to make developers aware of kind of the consequences of these choices to their downstreams. And going to venues like ShmooCon might be a opportunity for us to get directly in front of those folks and help show them that their choices are potentially going to have some negative consequences.
Well, that's the long and short of those two stories. Any the issues in the Slack channel, anybody who wants to take a read of that, and feel free to do so. Yeah.
Well, does anyone have any comments or any additional topics they'd like to discuss in our last call of the year? All right. Well, thank you all for your time and attention and your attendance throughout the year. Looking forward to collaborating with you in the new year. and have a quiet and restful end of year holidays. And we'll see you in 2023. Cheers, all.
Happy New Year.